1 minute and 30 seconds.
This is Auto Collabs.
Ah, you just missed getting over 90
World record
seconds,
was coming
Paul.
in. It wasn't even validated.
The world record. He was just balancing a bottle on his head because I don't know if you guys know this about Paul, but Paul is particular, and he's even particular about his water. Actually, more particular about his water than most.
I'm curious. Tell me more.
Water? Do you drink posh water?
He drinks fancy water from a can.
Oh, there's still water here. Actually, this is a company called Open Water, and the water comes in these aluminum cans. And the reason I got onto this is because we visited the Magnolia Silos in Austin, and they had these really cool waters in like the place we rented. And I was like, I love this company. Like the whole packaging is great. So now
packaging is great.
Here at the studio, I found them, and now this is just cool water, and it's refillable, and it's aluminum.
We have water only for $5 a bottle.
No, it's not that much. It's like $1.20 for this thing. And if it was in a plastic water bottle, people would just take it and throw it away. But we have bottle fillers here at the office, so you get the fancy water. People literally, clients come back, hey, do you have that fancy water? Legit.
It's nice.
And if I can have someone feel that way,
out of it, like it stays colder longer if you've had it in the fridge or anything.
You know what I think is interesting about this?
Kudos.
Water. Not only are we mostly made up of it, it's all over the place. And somebody somewhere was like, we should get into water. And then they got backhanded. You know, that Batman meme. They're like, you idiot. Everyone's in water, you know? And they were like, but what if we put it in an aluminum can?
Yeah, I remember when people, like when they started selling bottled water, and there was a little bit of like an outrage. Like, who would pay for bottled water? Think of
Yeah. But
like that,
here's the thing.
At one point, that was the dumbest idea ever.
Dumbest idea ever, which shows you can actually reinvent, you can innovate inside of something that might seem saturated to others. Like there's people that see opportunity, there's people that don't.
Oh,
I'm thinking about our guest for today.
Guys,
where you're going.
That's unbelievable. The fact that we got from balancing a water can on a head to there.
And what you don't understand if you're listening or watching the show is that when we start an intro, we just start an intro. Like there's no grand coordination. All right, I'll do this and you do that. Literally, I started balancing this on my head, and at some point somebody hit record and they started talking, so I knew we started.
Nathan is now a somebody. We should bring Nathan in for a brief second.
Yes.
To see how he feels about being called somebody.
Somebody out there.
It's fine.
There he is.
Somebody.
It's fine.
Somebody.
Oh man. Well, hey, we've got a couple somebodies that all of that conversation wrapped up into beautifully and nicely, hopefully from Michael Cirillo. We've got Tony Vigiletti and Shane Bell with Connexion, and we're just excited to share this conversation with you that we get to have with them. So enjoy the conversation.
All right, here we are with Shane and Tony from Connexion. I love conversations where I don't really know a lot about our guests because I have no idea what's coming down the pike. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today on Auto Collabs.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Tony, and Shane, you're right behind him because this is a question we love to ask on everybody because on the show we like to get the details on the person. Tony, how did you end up in the auto industry to begin with?
Wow. So back in 2011, I was working at a local bank in Detroit, position kind of went away, and I was finishing up my MBA, and there was one of the partners in my class had a connection at GM, and so I started working at OnStar in 2011. It completely living in Detroit my whole life. I wasn't the only one in my family who didn't work in the auto industry, but felt I was missing out. So.
Wait, you said you were the only one who didn't work in the auto industry at the time?
In my family, yeah.
Who
really?
What are some of the other roles that your family fills in the auto industry?
There were the engineers. Some worked at the factory. My dad actually grew up with the rental car industry. He had a company here in in Michigan. So I grew up in the rental car industry and then transitioned over to GM.
Wow. Huh.
I've got a question, but we're going to go to Shane first.
You have, but
I got a question about something you said in there, but we're going to go to Shane. Shane, how'd you get your start in the old auto industry?
Yeah. So I've worked in software for many years, and then I kind of just stumbled upon a provider in the the retail automotive space. And then I had a mentor that, worked for Toyota for many years, and both, the retail side, the rental side. Yeah, I know far more about, all of the programs depending on the brand than I ever thought that I would. And I've just stuck. So yeah.
All right. So Tony, now you got my question.
All right.
You got my question. So back in 2011, which isn't that too terribly long ago, but still, you were with OnStar.
Yep.
In 2011. Talk to me about OnStar in 2011, because OnStar in 2011 was, I remember actually, I started selling cars in 2009, and in 2011, OnStar was still like, sometimes you press the button and it worked. Sometimes you press the button and it wouldn't work. And sometimes you just didn't even know why you wanted to press the button at all. Right? Like, what was it like that wasn't absolute like dead set early. It was like, I think it was like mid 2000s that OnStar kind of hit the scene. But what was it like kind of being a part of the start of like connected technology inside vehicles?
Yeah, that was actually really the exciting part is, once I got into kind of the position I was in was kind of a sales operations type role. But as I kind of got more in depth of what OnStar was, got really invested about the technology side of it. So I kind of stayed on the technology side with the fleet, vehicle data. I was part of a lot of cool things. Like we got to, we were building in-vehicle applications. We were building, selling data out to third parties to, manage their fleets. And so, it was kind of a lot of different programs that we were kind of building there. Just actually how I met Connexion. When I was at GM, I was building a fleet product, using the embedded OnStar telematics to kind of manage your landscapers, florists, delivery drivers. Without using devices, how do you track those vehicles? How do you know what if they're speeding? How do you know where the cars are? If they're being driven out outside of hours? All that information. So we were actually building one at GM to have it branded as GM, and we realized that we probably couldn't build it the software side on our own. So we went out to suppliers, and that's where we met Connexion. And years later, I came full circle, and I decided to join the team and help grow.
There you go.
Very cool.
There you go.
That's like, I'm just imagining being in some of these meetings like, all right, we could either build this on our own, or we could go find some software people out there that know what they're doing, right? Yeah. Like that, it's a tough go building a car and building technology to meet it, and understanding the customer demand and doing all the R&D around like, how does this technology work? Is it going to work for customers? Exactly. Where did you see like the biggest gap that you feel like customers were asking for along the way, going, hey, we don't have access to this, but we need that, or like this is a gap in the industry that were solved like with particular features as they were coming out?
Yeah, that's actually kind of the unique piece. Is the customers that we were selling to didn't know they needed this solution, right? And so it's something that we see.
That always makes it easy to sell.
Exactly, right? They don't know what telematics are, and then you're like, oh, by the way, we can also manage your vehicle with the telematics, and it's a very different sales pitch, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of education, and we knew that even though customers, there was a need, because we know the Coca-Colas of the world, they have these solutions.
Fleet customers get it right away.
Yeah, you're right. But your small business owner who has 5 or 6 trucks doesn't see themselves as a fleet owner, right? Mm-hmm. They just see themselves as that's the car that I need to do to get either transportation or do the job. So they don't really view it as a fleet, and you're not going to hire a fleet manager to kind of oversee your operations when you're only running a couple of trucks. So it was kind of we were solving a need that they don't know they needed, and so it was kind of that was kind of the hassle, right? And so it was definitely interesting. We had that program I think for a couple of years. It was called Commercial Link. It was based on the Connexion platform that we have today, and then over there is when we transitioned to building OnTrack for GM, which is kind of the basis of our mobility platform now.
Yeah. Now, Shane, you were telling us beforehand that you're working with a lot of the larger groups that Connexion is integrated with, and through OnTrack and all that. How have you seen that change over the last couple of years in like the dealers or the OEM communicating with the customer about all of these advanced technologies, because it's like, it's definitely something new. You know, we've been connected through devices back since, you know, the late 90s really was when like the big connectivity started coming in through all of our devices. But telematics are still fairly new as like educating a customer and a dealer and everybody what's possible. How are you seeing that education map to results and to like good customer loyalty and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, we're starting to see more and more across like several OEMs. Like, for example, like Toyota and Lexus are very good at sort of marketing like the whole connectivity thing and like kind of selling it to the customer, and like whether it be like an app or like, hey, you can unlock your, you know, you can use your phone as your key and like things like that. I mean, I feel like certain brands are a little bit more sophisticated than others and kind of being creative in how they sell it, you know, to the consumer. But yeah, for sure. I mean, it's becoming more and more popular. I don't really see groups sort of selling the whole like telematics thing yet. But definitely, I feel like OEMs are starting to kind of hop on that trend. So
What are the like, you know, you're obviously in touch with a lot of people like on the ground as the account exec. What do you see as like the biggest need or request? You know, the biggest use cases where people are really leaning into it and really seeing some, you know, positive results.
yeah. So I mean, like me myself, like I mean, I drove Audis for a few years, and right now I don't have one, but I definitely enjoyed the whole like being able to unlock, like use my phone as a key is a really good example.
That
And
sounds so
even,
good. I
yeah,
can't
it's,
wait. I can't wait to get that feature. Now, I just saw
yeah,
what was it? The Hyundai commercial that just featured it on their new like return to work commercial. And I was like, oh, I want that so bad.
oh yeah, yeah. And there's a Genesis commercial that I keep seeing, um, where they unlock the car in the commercial with a phone. And I'm like, that's so genius, you know. And it can get as granular as like even knowing whether or not you left a window rolled down, is another really good example. So there's some really cool stuff going on for sure.
Make
There's,
me just
there's no better feature in Michigan than the remote start. When you land a plane, and you can use your phone and remote start your car, so it's nice and toasty when you get there. It's perfect in January.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I live in upstate New York. I love that feature.
Yeah, exactly.
As soon as you get
You
cell
guys
phone signal,
obviously-
you're like, start the car, start the car.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. You guys have obviously see a lot of data. Are you seeing increased adoption across customers in using the telematics that you're connected to? Like, I know you deal with a lot of rental and fleet and stuff like that, but are consumers adopting this as it's available by the OEMs and the dealers?
Yeah, they're adopting it and they're expecting it. That's part of it as well. Is that a lot of OEMs weren't at anywhere near the take rate of implementing these telematics into the cars that like GM was. Now you're seeing almost every OEM, they're getting it up the above 70% type connectivity. So they're starting to really adapt it, and again, customers are expecting it. So.
Yeah, I think that's key, because like when you go through everything else, you just I mean, Paul knows how I feel about if you don't accept Apple Pay at a place, right? Like I get a full, it's bad, right? And so you just expect these technologies to be integrated into everything. And so I think customers are expecting that with their vehicle ownership, or with their like even their service process or their rental process. Now, Shane, you were saying like I'm not seeing dealers educate their customers on this. Have you seen any do that or do that well, or is there a new expectation or need for us as for the dealer network to be working to educate their customers, not just post sale? Because you see, like that's why like a lot of these OEMs are getting these high 70% connectivity downloads and things like that, because the dealer is selling the car, then supporting that play into the market. But do you see a need for dealers to do pre-education on some of these items?
Yeah. I mean, I work with probably, I'd say roughly 50 of the top automotive groups in the US. And right now I can say honestly that I don't see at the group level that they're sort of leveraging the telematics and kind of like selling that. There's a multitude of ways that they could be doing that.
Yeah, give us some of those examples, actually, because I
Yeah,
think that
like
might help unlock some people's thinking, like, oh, I could do that and I don't. So
yeah,
see.
I think it should really come from the OEM educating the group on how to do that. Um, I mean, I want to be careful in what I say.
Sure. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I got it.
yeah, I'm kind of careful in what I say. But I mean, it could be as easy as, you know, like the OEM, like how they're doing it, like selling it, like, oh, like you can use your phone as a key and like you know, monitor fuel and stuff like that from your device. I mean, like I lost my phone. Like, I'm just being candid right now. I lost my phone, and it was like my whole world was in there, and so I had to get a new one. And so I think that like pushing things to mobile and like things being like in apps is very forward thinking, and I think that the OEMs are doing a really good job. I think that maybe they could work a little bit more closely with, you know, maybe the Asberries and the AutoNations of the world and kind of push a little bit more of that initiative.
And there are probably, I would think that there are certain markets where adoption or importance of these features is just way higher when you get closer to urban or technologically advanced like areas that have a lot of tech, a lot of young professionals. It seems like those areas even more so start leaning in on those, where some rural environments it'd be like a kind of a nice to have, but like you said, like you drove an Audi, which was your first exposure to the keyless, using your phone to open your door. There's just a lot fewer Audis in the country,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's no Audi dealers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And telematics, like Tony, we've talked a little bit, we had a webinar last week, but telematics is not just about like the app that the consumer uses, but also what dealers have access to in like, because telematics, like you said, with OnStar, like a lot of the origination came in fleet management and understanding where your fleets are, what they're doing, how much gas is in them, all of that. How can dealers right now be leveraging like all of these telematics in their daily operations?
Yeah, and they're actually doing it today, right? So with our platform that we have right now, when you take the car out, we know what the exact mileage is. You're not having someone write down a piece of paper. You're not having someone fat fingering things, changing miles. Also, like when you return a rental car, right? They look at kind of the needle and say, all right, we're going to charge you this much. And with our system and with the telematics from the car, we know exactly the car left with 20 gallons. It came back with 18 gallons. Do you want to charge that customer the 2 gallons, or do you want to waive it? It gives the dealership ownership. Gives them at least the information of how they can, of how they can manage that customer. So, if there's damage on it, if there's miles on it, fuel level, tire pressure. If the car is in an accident, they can find that information out without having to, reach out to the customer directly. So there's a lot of information that the vehicles can tell the dealership to kind of, because either way you look at it, right? The dealership loaner cars or their fleet, it's still a fleet. So it's the same type of use case that your commercial, rental operators have. And the data just helps again gives the dealership the information, and they can then decide how to proceed.
Right. And I kind of want to jump in. So like with service and maintenance, I think is a really good space to where they could sort of push, like a push notification, whether it be like, like the Toyota One app or like the Lexus, I think they're calling it the Monogram app or something like that, to kind of drive dealership based service versus them going to say like, I don't even know, like Pet Boys or whatever, like saying like, hey, like it looks like you're at however many miles, like it's time to check in with your service advisor. And then it would be a really white glove experience if they could.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Because we've always had to do it based on time.
Yeah.
Right?
Time
like
only.
3 months after service,
That's
4
it.
months after service. Oh, no. You're getting like within 100 miles of what you need.
Yeah, exactly.
I would use that.
I would use that the most.
So would I.
I forget all the time.
Yeah.
You know? That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, that drives retention as well, right? Because if I get a postcard in the mail, like you said, right, every 3 or 4 months saying, "Hey, maybe you need an oil change," or I get a message saying, "Hey, Tony, your car told us you need an oil change. Come on in, and we'll, here's, schedule online, right? Have the availability to book right on my phone when I get in."
Or your car told us you need an oil change. Should we drop off one of our loaners to you tomorrow or Thursday?
Absolutely.
We can't wait to pick up your vehicle and bring it in and
Yes
get
or
it serviced
no,
while you
right.
have one of our cars.
I'm like,
Come on
Kyle,
now, talk about retention.
save these secrets, Kyle.
Right, save the secrets. No, that's good. I mean, look, retention and customer loyalty are at a necessity. They're at an all-time high. So whether it be an ownership experience or a service experience or anything like that, Connected Car allows for that. And so obviously Connexion and some of the manufacturers that are connected into those tools are doing that. And I'm sure, like, if people want to find you, Tony, Shane, you guys are all over the LinkedIn and all that, and can go to Connexion. Is it .com?
Connexion.com.
Awesome. And would love, and if anyone wants to connect with them, please do. But Tony, Shane, it's been fun getting to know you guys, getting to know like what's out there in the world of telematics, and really appreciate you joining us here on Auto Collabs.
We'll see you guys both.
Thanks for having us.
Now let's up the ante and see if we can do a open glass of water.
Okay.
For the whole outro.
Oh. Michael now has an open glass of water balanced on his head, and Kyle has a hat balanced on his head.
I can't move my mouth.
But like upside down, it's not that. It was more fancy than what you said. You were like, just a hat, because you put a hat.
It was
upside
down.
Hey, look, here's the thing. When I think about the evolution of technology in automotive, there's so many times where technology precedes like what customers are ready for.
Oh yeah.
And I think that automotive is a lot of times ahead. We're actually experiencing a lot of this right now, right? With EVs, where the education has to come alongside the technology. So I love how Tony was talking about, like, hey, we were building OnStar, and part of that was actually educating the customer that this is something they could use and potentially will actually feel the need for. And I mean, now you think about now, if you didn't have some level of connection with your car, with an app, or like the connected ideas of whether it be being just connected to simply to the navigation,
right?
Yeah,
it's something that we just can't even fathom.
This is what I love. Like, you think about Steve Jobs. He's been on my mind a lot today for some reason. We talked about him in our team meeting this morning. I think about Steve Jobs. He goes, I better take this off, but I'm impressed with myself. He goes, hey, here's the marketing pitch to general customer. You can put 2,500 songs in your pocket. You know what they were probably saying internally? We are going to inject a data collection device in the pocket of every human being on planet Earth. And then just a few years later, we're going to know where they go consistently. Oh, they go to Kroger 3 times a week after 5 p.m. And people are afraid that Facebook's listening. Where I'm going with this is then a few years later, they're like, hey, automakers, it'd be cool is if we injected that same data collection device and interfaced it with your vehicle.
Got him.
Right.
Travel diagnostics,
driving habits. You look at the Progressive app. It can tell when you've opened your phone while the car's moving, and it'll be like, we perceive that you were on your phone while driving. Big problem. And I think about that in terms of this conversation.
Does it do that?
Yeah, the Progressive app. Yeah,
asking for
it detects when you've unlocked your phone while the car is moving. All of this to say, like, he's talking about fleet and how business owners, maybe with 5 or 6 trucks don't think of themselves as owning a fleet, and the telematics and all of these different layers of connectivity. And he was really there in the beginning. And my whole summation of this point is, the other day I'm visiting a client 5 hours from me. I drive old Tessie, the Tesla, down, and myself and my business partner that I'm with get curious. So we subscribe to full autopilot, and that sucker drove us home, and we were freaked out for the first 5 minutes, and oh so shocking how comfortable we got during that drive with this thing driving itself. All this to
Interesting.
say, Tony's seen the beginning with OnStar. I have to believe there were brains back then going, wait until you see the level of connectivity that this is the catalyst for in the future.
Without a doubt. Gee. Well, look, we hope that this conversation, he's putting the water back on his head. Michael, I avoided the whole, and Kyle's putting his hat upside down. Listen, sometimes I wonder about my decisions in who I do business with and who I get on podcasts with. And this is one of those moments. But regardless, I hope we got you thinking a little more broadly about what's going on and how you can lean in to meeting the customers where they're at and not assuming they know what they should be doing, but educate them, walk them there. I'm going to try to walk Kyle and Michael Cirillo over to the urgent care as soon as we're off this podcast. So on behalf of Kyle Mountseer, Michael Cirillo, and myself, thank you so much for joining us on Auto Collabs.
Welcome to Auto Collabs. Why are we recording?
Are we rolling yet?